Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Schefter, Principal of Schefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.schefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Schefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. Today, I'm really excited because I know I say that every week, right? But I'm really excited this week because we have Catina Franklin Sweedy, who is from Embark Center for Self-Directed Education. And on a lot of the Facebook groups, the mom groups that I'm in, everybody's talking about education and what to do with school and what schooling is working and what schooling is not working. And a big thing is self-directed education of, let's let the kids, decide. So what does that look like, Catina? Like, how is self-directed education really work?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here and talk to you too. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. So, self-directed education can be a little tricky because sometimes people think of it like, oh, I'm going to let my kid self-direct himself into this thing that I really want them to be doing. So, when we talk about it here at Embark Center, we're talking about that pure form of consent-based self-directed education. So, it truly is a child choosing to follow their own interests and their own passions of what they're excited about. Where it gets a little hard for some people is a lot of times that does not look like calculus and trigonometry. It really can look like, oh my gosh, I'm really into making baked Alaska, or I want to play Roblox, or I really want to learn all I can about horses and things like that. So what we do at Embark Center is we follow along, and we are so curious too and excited about what people want to learn. And we don't have an agenda for what people want, should be learning. So they get to really, truly explore what they're interested in.
That is so awesome. But how does that work? Because I know all the teachers are like, yeah, whatever. They're never going to go to college. How are you going to learn? You have to learn trigonometry. You have to learn English. Like, what does that look like?
Well, I can say as a 49-year-old adult, I don't use trigonometry in my job. And so, and that's one of the things that's so different in how we look at education, especially now for the past 20 years with the growth of the internet, right? So education really was based on this concept that you needed to know a little bit of everything because there was no way to access a little bit of everything. But now we can learn a whole lot about everything, and we can get it from the phone that's in our pocket, right? So the way we approach education really does need to shift. And so when people come to Embark Center, right, and it is a big leap of faith for a lot of people that have done traditional schooling, and their kid really just wants to let's pick the dolphin, they're really into dolphins, right? And that can be kind of scary, like, okay, my kid is like really hyper focused on dolphins and they're wanting to learn everything about dolphins. How are they going to go to college? So the first thing we do is say, okay, your kid's 11, it's going to be okay. And it's going to be all right. And what that can look like for older kids is like, hey, they're really into dolphins, and where do we go from here? But the question truly comes from the child themselves. What are the kids' goals? What do they want to do? Do they want to go to college even? Do they want to get a job? Do they want to have an apprenticeship? So we work with each person to help them reach their goals. And I see, sometimes I say I feel like a snake oil salesman because you can go to college without going to traditional school. We see it all the time. And what it can look like is people do the research on where they want to go to school, and you reverse engineer it. Like, okay, I really want to go to this college. What do they need to see from me to get through the application process? And then what do I need to feel comfortable with in my skill set to be able to go to college? And by the time people get to that place, they're ready to do those steps. It's that theory of self-determination. It's the autonomy and the competency and relatedness, right? So if I'm telling somebody when they're 11 years years old, you can't be, hyperfixated on dolphins because you're not going to be able to go to college. That it's not even going to compute, right? And if I say
Right.
that to somebody when they're 17, that still isn't going to compute. But if they had said to me, I really want to go into electrical engineering, but I'm going to spend all my time talking about dolphins and researching dolphins, that would be a conversation like, okay, so what is that going to look like? And what are the choices that you want to be making right now? Maybe you don't want to go to college for electrical engineering. Maybe you actually want to do marine biology or something like that. And so people at Embark Center, the way it works here in Virginia, they're registered as homeschoolers. And so they're following all the homeschool guidelines. They're meeting all the compliance that we need here in the state of Virginia. And they create their own transcripts. So we help people write their transcripts, and they really do shine with what you do and what you're passionate about. So instead of English 9, you might have character and plot development through Dungeons and Dragons, right? So people create those transcripts and then they can apply to college that way. It does look different, and it can look different. And there are lots of people that are able to make it work. I think the most important part is staying in the now with your child and asking them questions in a way that you can release and not be judgmental. And I'm a mom, and so I know what it feels like to be really scared, like, oh my gosh, is everybody gonna think I'm crazy, or what if my child doesn't, become a successful adult? So it's really also checking in with yourself and going, how am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling scared, or I'm feeling embarrassed because all of my friends' kids are doing all this other stuff. And that's our own personal work to do too. And so to
Right.
be able to come to the table and say, how can I support you? I want to be that person for you, to be your support staff. Like, I joke all the time. I'm like, oh, it must be so nice to have a personal assistant, right?
Right.
So it's letting them lead the way, and then just keeping that curiosity and that openness and a problem solving mentality. Like, okay, how are we going to get there together?
So, like, how is it set up at Embark Center? Like, is there a classroom? Is it one-on-one? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, what a great question. So, first and foremost, we're actually a youth run democracy with staff. So, everybody at Embark Center runs Embark Center together. And it's actually everybody that wants to be part of running Embark Center. So, we have community meeting once a week where we come together, and we discuss everything from the budget to cleaning. Yesterday, our meeting was about hiring an intern. So, everybody got together that wanted to be there to talk and meet this potential intern we have, interview him, ask him questions, and he had the opportunity to interview us. So it's collaborative. And like I said, they really can sit down and do a budget meeting with us and go through that whole budget. So the first part is that when I said consent-based education, we're a consent-based entire education model. So for kids that have demand avoidance, it's a great place for them to be, because now they're actually part of the conversation. We celebrate the no, like, okay, you said no, awesome, you're finding your inner voice. I'm so
Right.
happy for you. So we run it together. And then for classes and one-on-ones and offerings and things like that, once again, it's really based on what people want. So we do have a class schedule, and not everybody has to go to all of the classes. I think a big class would be film studies, which right now maybe has 10 people in it or 12 people in it. But then we can have other classes like Spanish that have 2 or 3 people in it. And each year the schedule changes, because kids are like, I really want to do real estate, or I really want to learn about cults, or I really want to learn about Fortnite and things like that. And actually, I said each year it changes. It can change each week. And we have our schedule up on a big whiteboard, and people can add to the schedule or, take away from the schedule if it's something that they want to add that they're going to lead, or that they're like, you know what, this class that I'm leading about JoJo's Bizarre Adventures hasn't had anybody in it for the past 2 weeks. So I think nobody's really interested. So I'm just going to take that off the schedule. So Embark members can run the classes, staff can run the classes. And we also have a lot of outside volunteers that come in to teach classes.
Oh,
And
cool.
we kind of have maybe just a teeny tiny ulterior motive there, because we love having adults from the community come in to see what it's like to have a community of young people that are running it. Because
Right.
I think in our culture, we just don't give young people enough credit. They really can make the big decisions because they care about this community. They care about themselves, and they care about each other, and they really do want to work together. That's not to say we haven't had conflict and things like that. We always will, because every community does. But it's really great to see the kids working together. If there is something that you wanted to do, nobody else wants to do underwater basket weaving with you. We also help people find resources for that. Maybe it's a volunteer coming in, or if we can't find anybody, it's finding, maybe you could take another class somewhere else. So that we really are here as support staff. We call ourselves program advisors, but we're here to help you in whatever way that you need us. So we have the classes, we have one-on-ones. Field trips are the same way. Kids propose them. So we've had everything from going to a local farm into DC to Guatemala. One year, somebody was like, I think we really should go do like a trip abroad. And so for our first one, and they put it all together. The adults were just along the way to, offer feedback or, sign the credit card to book the flights, but they did all the research. And the first one we did was Puerto Rico, like that. And so we like to keep all the horizons open for what your dreams are. We've definitely had somebody pitch North Korea, and and then everybody's like, well, these are the cons with going to North Korea. And then the last one is Andrea Kubela McKay, who's the founder of Embark, and I are both mentors to the kids. So we serve them as, once a week, you can have a meeting with us. Once again, it's not compulsory. And we check in, just like I was saying earlier with my own kids. It's like, okay, what do you need? What are you up to? What's going on? And that could look like putting together a college transcript and researching colleges, or it can be playing Minecraft together, or navigating how to buy the things that you want to buy at the thrift shop when you have a budget of $7. So it can really be anything based on what the kids are looking for.
Got it. So they're registered as a homeschooler. Then what is it like? How does it work? Are there requirements of being there certain hours, or are there certain hours you're open? What does that look like?
So we're open on Monday through Thursday, 9 to 3:30, and we are. It's Friday is an administrative day, but it's also closed because we're like, go out into the world. There's so much to do. You can go on adventures with your friends, or you can volunteer, or get a job, or take classes at the community college, or sleep, or play video games. So that's your time. But we really want to, think about what we do here as sort of a launching point for people. So even if they don't stay here the whole time and they decide I want to go back into traditional school, we celebrate that too, just as much as we celebrate our graduates. For the homeschool requirements in Virginia, you just have to demonstrate proof of progress. So we don't have any academic requirements people have to meet in our homeschooling laws here. The proof of progress is very open to interpretation. You can do a standardized test like the CAT, the California Achievement Test, and that's not really open to interpretation, or you can use an evaluator. And so Andrea and I both serve as evaluators. And what we do is we sit down with people and we're like, so how was your year? What worked well for you? Where do you think you progressed? What could you do differently? What was a challenge for you? And then we write up a letter, and families send that in. Since everybody is registered as a homeschooler, they take their own attendance. And since our belief is all life is learning, it's all natural learning that we all do anyway, then you're always in session.
Interesting. So there's no requirements. Like somebody could technically enroll, come Monday for 2 hours, and then do everything else at home?
Yes, if they want to. And we have some people that have a lot of trauma from school. So we actually do see that, or people with anxiety, they'll come in just for a little bit, sometimes even 5-10 minutes, just to have that sense of being in the space, and then they can sort of grow from there. Yeah. So we're here to be used the way that you need us to be.
That is awesome. So how does it work for the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia? Like we all intertwine with everything. How does that work for like DC residents or Maryland residents? Are they able to come?
Yes, so, and West Virginia too. And before we started this conversation on live, I was saying I wish there were more of us, more places like us
Yes.
around. Yeah. So what we do is we help each person from where they are meet those requirements within those areas. So we haven't actually had anybody from DC, so I'm not familiar with the DC homeschool laws, but Maryland is different than us, and West Virginia is different than us. So we work with each family to help them meet those requirements.
Got it. So then it's I guess, well, you don't even provide the curriculum though. You kind of, I'm just trying to think, I'm thinking about alternative schooling for my daughter. Most
Yeah.
people know, for middle school, because I don't know, her personality,
Yeah, and so the
what that would look
curriculum
like.
is yours, right? You can create it the way you want it to be, and it is a leap to not look at it from that academic point of view. And we have so many tools to show people the value of what they're learning now. We can use ChatGPT to go in there and say, ChatGPT, and I do this all the time when I'm helping people with transcripts, but also looking at the value of what they care about and what's interesting to them, and say, all right, ChatGPT, write me up a name and a description of a college class that focuses on walking in the creek and catching fish, right? And seeing like what it spits out. And some of it is really wonderful. And it helps people look at their life in a different way. I went to school for gosh, how many, 18 years, I went to school for a long time. So getting out of that schoolish, that's an Akila Richards, she's amazing. If people don't know her, look her up, mentality of it has to be a boxed, compartmentalized education of these subjects that have been around for 125 years, that is supposed to be this way. We're used to that assembly line, let's break it into pieces kind of
Right.
education. And so just, off the top of my head, I was just in a meeting with somebody earlier today, and he really wanted to tell me all about his cats, and he's taking a history of video games class and things like that. So you can piece it together in a way that works for you. And also what's kind of fun to do is to look at it and say, okay, let's play this game. Let's look at it and say, okay, what are you learning about history from this video game you're playing? And what are you learning about math from this baking that you're doing? And so pulling them out of the everyday activities or the interests that people have and saying, oh my gosh, look at all these things that you're doing very naturally. That helps too. And to go back to what you were saying earlier with college, that conversation comes into play later on for people that want to go to college in a more academic way. Like, okay, so you haven't done math here for 6 years and you want to go on to a 4-year college. So where do you want to be? What are the requirements that you think you're going to need to have? Let's go to that website and look at it. And when you're ready to do it, when you're activated with that self-determination theory, you can do it faster and you can retain that information more because you're in a state of
Right.
calm in a way that you're not when you're stressed out.
It makes so much sense. Like I'm loving this more and more. So it's like so for my daughter, math was just her thing for a while. It's so funny. She was totally into math. She's in 5th grade now. 2 years ago, she taught herself square roots because she just wanted to, just because that was it. But now she's like, yeah, math's not my thing as much. I like reading now, which is great. But she still has to do the curriculum the way the curriculum has to be done in the school, because you have to do this and you have to do that. And I hate it. But it's what you have to do when you're going to public schools, right?
Yeah, and so we meet with a lot of people that are coming from public school, and we might not be the best fit, right? We don't have a color guard here, and so what we try and do is have people look at it a little bit differently. And so this is a real example. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. Somebody called us, and they're like, "I really don't want to do math in school anymore. I don't want to do science in school anymore. It's torture. I'm failing, and like even to the point of it hurts my body. I have so much anxiety over this kind of thing, and I want to come to Embark. Do you guys have a color guard?" And I said, well, color guards maybe have 25 people. We have about 25 people. So you'd be hard pressed to convince everybody here to do a color guard. And we don't have the same kind of resources that the high school does. And so let's look at this now instead of as an I have to, but as a I choose to. I choose. Now I can choose, maybe I will try this homeschooling thing, or maybe I will try Embark Center or Fusion or a different organization, knowing that in that choice, if I can't find an outside color guard community, I am giving up my color guard. Or I can choose to stay in school and find a way to make math and science work for me, but I get to keep color guard. And that also can, and parents, I love all of us. It's very hard to be a parent. They don't give us an instruction manual. That's also letting go some expectations too sometimes. Sometimes it can be
Right.
like, yeah, it's okay for you to get a C or a D as long as you're passing and you're healthy, you're mentally healthy, and these are your goals that you're working toward. Sometimes that can be that sort of compromise. Like, I'm going to back off as a parent with my expectations, knowing
Right.
that, hey, if you wanted to go to Harvard, that consequence might be that D in science might not be what you're looking for. But so we try and frame it as much as we can in choices. And a lot of people don't know they have a choice about school. They feel this just incredible weight of the legality of truancy, which is
Yeah.
cruel, right? And so
Yeah.
knowing that you can be like, you know what, I choose this. I can choose public school. And in all fairness, this is a place of privilege being able to choose it.
Right.
Some people don't have that choice, just because of, and demographics and economics and social structure in the United States. But knowing that now you can look at it and frame it a different way is really helpful for parents and kids especially.
Right. So it's kind of like I'm thinking along the lines of it enhances the homeschool, because I know a big thing with, parents with the kids with PDA or school refusal, or, just high anxiety,
Mhm.
a big thing is like, I can't homeschool. Like, I don't have, I can't teach my kid this, that, and the other, and I have to work. So what do I do? So you guys provide that environment to help them along, basically.
Yeah, we do a lot of parent support, as you can imagine. So we have, we try and do community events every other month, like potlucks and things like that. We also have parent circles that meet every other month, where we're here for parents to ask questions. And really, like I said before, with the democratic system that we have, that really is the heart and soul of what we do. And there are a lot of resources out there too. So even if Embark isn't the right place for you and you feel like you can't do homeschooling, there are working while homeschooling groups on Facebook that you can join, to get ideas from people. School doesn't have to take place between 8 and 3. It can
Right.
happen in the evenings. If your child can stay home by themselves, then you can do it on the weekends or work around your schedule. The form of self-directed education that we use is called unschooling, and that's child-led learning, and that is a lot easier to do than fighting with your child to get
Right.
them to do what you think is a traditional curriculum. And like I said before, it's meeting your kid where they are and what they want their lives to be in the moment, and when they're able or wanting to think about those future steps, how can I be there for you to support you with that as well? It's just,
Yep.
when we are talking about the DMV, it is such a high pressure area for kids to go to college. Like, the
Yep.
only way to success is to go to college. And it's
Be on
not
the
just
honor
any
guard.
college.
Yep.
It's
I
got to
mean,
be
honor
this
roll.
college, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so that that's a really hard, kind of brutal system for kids and parents to be able to just
Right.
take that step back and go, okay, you know what, my child's mental health is the priority now this is the
Yep.
priority. And when you can do that and see what your child is interested in and what they're excited about, it's really this amazing way of connecting with your young person in your life and go, I don't have to control every single aspect of their life. I don't have to fight with you. I started out as, when my husband and I decided to homeschool, our reason was we felt like it should be our children's choice of what to do with their lives. And we
Right.
asked them, do you want to go to school? And they said no. And I taught in school at the same time. So it was like my dirty little secret that I would go into school and my kids didn't go to school.
Right.
And so they had experience sometimes coming into school with me if I couldn't get a babysitter, my husband wasn't there. And so they knew what it was like to be in school. And I was in bands. So they would be in the band room and they would always be like, no, this isn't something I want to do. And so, but my my eldest kid was really into any workbook. So any app I could find, any workbook, they were into it. But it was my son that was like, I'm not going to do any of it. He had my number. And it was before I even knew what demand avoidance was, right? And he was like, nope, I'm not going to do anything because you want me to do it. And the only reason you want me to do it is because you'll look good in front of the other moms if I'm reading when I'm 4. And I remember being like, uh-oh.
Like, what am I gonna do now, right?
Yeah, like, how did you know this?
Right.
It was like he knew that deep, dark part of my brain,
Right.
like the id, he knew it.
Yeah.
And so I was fighting with him so much. And I remember thinking, I'm fighting with a little boy. And
Right.
I want him to come home for Thanksgiving. I want him to tell me if he's having trouble in a relationship. I want him to be able to come to me as a safe person. And I am creating a very unsafe relationship for him right now. And
Yep.
I thought, okay, I heard about this crazy thing called unschooling, and you can just teach yourself to read or whatever it was, right? But
Yeah.
it was, I still continued to read to him every night, and we put all the subtitles on all the movies and everything. So he's surrounded with it, and he really loved Minecraft, and he really wanted to craft in Minecraft, and he wasn't going to ask me for help because I had already,
No way.
demonstrated who I was. And so he found other resources. He asked his older sibling, he asked his friends, he taught himself just naturally. And not every kid can do that. Sometimes they need extra support with dyslexia and things like that. But that's our role, to be that extra support. But it took him a while to get to that place of being like, okay, I can ask my mom for help. Definitely dad. He could ask dad all the time. And
Right.
so, but that's sort of how I got into unschooling. It really was from a demand avoidant child that I didn't know what it was, but I just couldn't fight it. And I
Yeah.
had to sort of roll. He was pushing and I had to roll away. I was like, okay, he pushed me out of the way. I've got to go with this because I can't keep pushing back anymore.
Yeah. It's so funny we were saying about how in the DMV area, about the pressure and stuff. And like, you see all these kids, adults, whatever, the cars have my child's on honor roll. And I want one, like, my kid is well adjusted and mentally healthy,
I think
not
that's
saying,
a great,
right.
Right. I mean, of course, we don't want to throw our kids under the bus or anything, but
Yeah,
I think that's a
right.
great bumper sticker. I saw one that said, my kid ate your honor roll student.
Right. And not saying that you can't have both. I mean, you can
Right.
100% have both.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you know what? For some kids, honor roll is not going to happen. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you don't, so like, I'm just thinking about and that's what unfortunately our society is, and the school system is that you have to be in this
Yes.
box to get this and to feel smart and to feel,
Right.
and it's just so, most people know my story. I was brought up, I didn't think I was smart because I couldn't spell and my grammar was a little off and my math wasn't quite right for me. But, clearly I went to law school. I was on law review. I run a law firm,
Yeah.
clearly I was, but because of the way society was and what school said was, and I didn't fit in that box.
Yep.
It was, unfortunately, I grew up not thinking I was smart enough.
Yeah.
My best friend and I in law school, like the whole first year, we were like, when are they going to realize we're not smart enough to be here?
Right.
Which is scary, right?
Yes,
We
I wonder how
were.
many of us relate to that.
Yeah.
Mine was always math, and I have one of these, deep-seated anxiety and fear of math, and yet I went to music school and I'm doing math constantly and really complicated mathematics, right?
Right.
And I was living them in a way because I'm a clarinetist, so I have to play, and so my way of math was breathing and feeling the tempo and the intonation and things like that. But I will, up until just a couple of years ago, before I realized that my relationship with math was deeply emotional and not in any way practical, that I would say, oh, I'm just terrible at math or I hate math. But I'm not. I'm good at math and I like math and I enjoy math. But I felt so stupid with math because I couldn't do a timed multiplication test.
Right.
And I would sit there for every lunch and I would do it over and over and over again. And I couldn't do it. And all my friends would go outside and they would have recess. And I was definitely needing recess. All I
Right.
need is a stamp on the piece of paper to confirm my ADHD. And I just couldn't pull through that time in my life. And so from then on, it was, well, this I'm just a failure at. So I'll always be a failure at it, instead of seeing it as this is a challenge, and I see this differently. I experience this differently. I perhaps need no timer on this test. But that's what's hard about traditional education, is that box, right?
Yeah.
We have so many kids that we're working with. We have to get so many kids through this system by the end of the day so that we can get our funding and I can still keep my job, and I don't want to let anybody down. And yet the system was not designed for this. The history of our American school system is not fantastic. And if you really read into it, and that's where I'm glad to be part of change. I used to call my clarinet lessons with my students clarapy, because it was more like therapy than it was clarinet lessons, because I would be there for them and they would be crying. They'd be like, I'm taking 7 AP classes. I can't do this.
Ugh.
Or I had another, really, my son was my great teacher with unschooling, but I had a clarinet student, and I'll call him Jay. He was my great teacher for I need to be part of change, because he would come into his lessons and he could make chainmail, and he would make the tools to make the chainmail the medieval way. And he would say, but I'm a failure and I'm stupid and I can't pass multiplication test. And I don't have any friends. Like, it was awful. It was so heartbreaking. And I finally called his mom, his clarinet teacher, and I'm like, hey, I wanted to check in to see if he's okay, because I'm really worried about him. One of the things he had said is, I have ADD, I can't focus on anything. And I was like, but you're making chainmail. You're totally focused on this chainmail and you're bringing it to me and showing me, and it's amazing. And the mom, she started crying and she said, thank you for calling. Nobody sees him. I feel like he can't be seen. It was even worse than invisible. It was like, they just won't see him. And that was my moment. I'm like, I can't do this. I have to be a part of another place where at least we can get all the kids like Jay, like you can spend all your time making that, show me all of the chainmail.
Right.
Yeah,
no, it's so awesome. It's just, so I want to go back to, so like you only open 9 to 3:30 Monday through Thursday. Do you have like before or after, or like that's it, 9 to 3:30?
Yeah, that's it. And we really kind of have to push these guys out the door at 3:30. And they don't have to come at 9 also. So they can sleep in, they can get, that teenager sleep that they need. So most people get here around 10, and yet they can stay. We're in the historic part of Leesburg, so if they need to stay later, sometimes they'll go to the coffee shop with their friends and hang out there. We're near the library, they'll go there. We do have some people that get here early. We have a lot of coffee shops. I think we have 7 coffee shops. It's crazy.
Wow.
And so, and we also, we call it an open campus. We only have the one building, but they can go into town. And so the different shopkeepers around town know them, like at the thrift shop or the candy shop or the ice cream place or the bagel place. So I need to do this one day. I swear I will. It's just right. The candy shop is my best math class, right? Because
right? Sure.
It's like, oh my God, all this candy. I only have $5. And so yes, they have that part too. I'm trying to think of other logistical things. We run the traditional school year. We tried to stay open for the summer, but because of people's travel schedules or work schedules, not everybody was here. So sometimes only 1 or 2 people would show up and they're like, well, I don't want to hang out with, just you. And so the summer didn't really work for us that well. The only difference is our spring break aligns with the local community college, because we do have people that will take classes there as well.
And what age, like what grades do you guys support?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. This is one thing I always forget to talk about, and I love it. We don't have any grades. So in both senses, we don't have testing or grades or homework unless you want it. Very few people want it. And we don't have grades in the sense of 10th to 11th or whatever, grades like that. So we have ages 10 to 18, and we are willing to, the community came up with this plan. So if you are 1 year younger than the youngest kid here, then we'll look at your application. But if you're like 6 years old and the next oldest person is 10, then we'll ask you to wait a little bit, or maybe find a couple other 6-year-olds that want to come with you, because we did have that one year. We lowered our age to 6, and we only had one 6-year-old, and the next person was 12. And so he was so bummed out. He didn't have a cohort of people around his age for his interests. So we don't have, since we don't have any grades, we have free age mixing of everybody. So you can hang out with all the different ages. And what ends up happening is when people are new here, they'll say, well, how old is that person? Like, how many 16-year-old girls do you have? And I'm always like, I don't know. I have to look it up, because you forget, and you really do hang out with people based on what your interests are, or what your abilities are, or what if you want to be going to town and things like that. So that ends up slipping away, that sort of segregation from your age, which is a really, really cool thing, because sometimes we'll get these teenage boys come in and they'll start playing Legos again, or they'll play with Minecraft again, because they couldn't have done that before because of how people would have seen that. And you'll see a lot of peer-to-peer teaching and modeling. And so one of the ways we do conflict resolution here is we use restorative practices and nonviolent communication. So we don't have a punitive system. So it's not you're wrong, you're right, you're good, you're bad. It's more like, I have a need, you have a need, and the strategy that you just took caused me harm. How are we going to work this out? So that's how we do conflict resolution. And some of our most incredible modelers are the younger ones that have grown up here, and they can show or model how to be in a community that's based on restorative problem solving as opposed to punishment.
So what does that look like? Because I know, so I visited Fairhaven, which is a Sudbury model, it sounds very similar to the unschooling. And they did things like that people would put in, like the kids would put in, so-and-so hurt me by doing this. And then the community or their justice group, I forgot what they called it, but their group would determine what the consequence would be for that. So what does it look like at Embark?
Oh, thank you so much for asking this question. So at Sudbury schools, some of them are shifting, but a lot of them use a judicial committee. So it's like a trial, and all the kids make the rules at a Sudbury school. So they have these great big books of all these rules. In order to make the rule, you bring it to community meeting and you vote, you do Robert's Rules of Order and all this other stuff. And then the trial really is with a plaintiff and a defendant, and a jury trial, jury of your peers. And so here with restorative practices, what it would look like is, let's say I pushed you really hard, and you were like, hey, don't push me. And so if we can't work it out ourselves, sometimes, so what we ask people or encourage people to do is ask for a mediator. And so a mediator could be a staff person, but it also could be another Embark member that's offered to be a mediator. And so the mediator can say, can you tell me your story? Can you tell me your story? What are your needs? How do we work this out? And if it gets beyond that, then we have a conflict resolution circle. So what we do in the circle is we ask you to tell your side of the story, and then I'll tell my side of the story. We work with everybody to tell the story without judgments or evaluations, which looks like we're not going to call each other names. We're not going to say, hey, you're wrong. It's going to be, I'll tell my story, you tell your story. And then once we come to an agreement of this is the reality, we share the reality of what happened. And you can bring somebody with you to the conflict resolution circle. So you could be like, I'm going to bring my friends with me that were there, or I'm going to bring my friend that's really good at co-regulation. Very rarely does anybody say, I'm going to bring my good co-regulator. They'll be like, this person feels good to be around. So I'll just ask Liam if she can come with me, right, and sit next to me. And so we each can have, our support staff, with us too. And so we do a consent round to see if everybody's on the same page. And then, and this is what's really interesting. And we're very careful with this because sometimes nonviolent communication can feel invasive. It's only with consent. So if you want to share how you felt, I felt angry, I felt sad, I felt ashamed, or whatever, please share your feelings, because that makes the request more powerful. And so then I could share something like, wait, did I push you or you pushed me? What was my, I think I pushed you. You could say, I felt really scared because I have a need for safety and I have a need for my bodily autonomy. And I could say, well, I felt really angry because I have a need for safety too. And you said nobody likes me and I don't have any friends. And so usually that's where it ends up happening. And it's never just a random thing, right? And then it gets into, and then we have the conversation about what our needs are. And then the next step is a strategy, and it's based on the requests. What do I need to be safe here? What do you need to be safe here? What does our community need for us to be safe here? And then we do, and depending on how many other people are involved, like with the people that were observers, we try not to say witnesses because that's very trial-y, but the other people there, we can do a consent round, like, is this good enough for now, safe enough to try? And so we're going to try. Maybe you and I are like, maybe we shouldn't be in the same room together for a little bit, or maybe if you say, or if I say something that causes you to feel anger, that if you don't feel brave enough at that moment to advocate for yourself, you can ask for help for advocating for yourself. And so we come up with these strategies together, and then we have a check-in period. So in a week, whatever we decide, we're going to come back and check in and see how things are going. So it doesn't at all look like that JC. It's very, very much more intimate, and it can be uncomfortable for people. And so we try and work with people with that too, so it doesn't feel invasive. But we do have a need for a safe community here. So sometimes people don't feel ready to do that problem solving process. So they'll say, I'm going to take a walk, or I'm not going to come back for a little bit. I'll take a day or two to sort of regulate myself. And when I feel ready, I can come. So that's what we ask, is for you to be willing to come to the table, and with the understanding that we're all going to, that mistakes are okay. And it's okay if we try this and it doesn't work, that we can just keep coming back to the table. And sometimes that can really stretch our community too, because it's that the needs of the one, and what are the needs of the many. I tried not to say versus the needs of the many, right? But the needs of the one and the needs of the many. And how do we incorporate that, knowing that sometimes the needs of the one can be, like, if we think of our community as a human body, like if that one person is hurting, it's our toe is hurting. So our whole community is hurting. So we have to address that to find out how we can address that within our community. So very rarely we've had some people say, I don't think this is the right community for me with this kind of conflict resolution. I think it would be easier just to go to school and have a detention. I just want to do my time and come back in. But most times people are up for it.
Right. No, and I can see that, because I can see that it's scary going into that vulnerable place and showing your emotions and having your emotions. And for most of us adults, it's even scary and hard. But I see it as the whole community is doing it and somebody else is being vulnerable with me, that it's just more likely, like God, I'm just thinking about like how well adjusted these kids are in their emotional regulation and understanding, right?
Yeah, I have adults in my life that I'm like, wow, Embark would have been great for you.
Right.
And but also for me too, because I mess up, and so I've certainly been in this meeting myself. Like, I did this, like I behaved in this way, and this caused harm, and I am sorry. And how can I um, repair this harm with you? What are your needs when you're in community with me? Because I do believe I have demand avoidance. It took me, until I was an adult to realize it. And so sometimes when you have two demand avoidant people in a space, it can be very challenging, right? And so I'm a human, and I make mistakes. And so for me, it's super scary to go into a meeting too and be like, hey, I'm the one that totally messed this up. What can I do? What do you need from me? And at the same time, I'm grateful that I get to be an adult that models that with a young person. And I can be like, yeah, I am really sorry. This was not my intention at all. And then and I hate to say it like this, but shift that power dynamic too, to
Right.
be like, you are the person here that is the focus of this, and I am secondary in a way. And so because kids
Yeah.
don't get that. They just don't get it. And so we'll see that when they come from school, because I'm an adult, they'll be hesitant around me, like, yeah, I don't know about that lady, right? And so
Right.
and so it takes a bit. And I'm always grateful when I see that sort of glass break, and then they can be in a relationship with me that doesn't have to have so much of that power that adults inherently have and teachers have. And so that's one of the things we try and break, is that we are all here in this community together, regardless
Yeah.
of what our status is.
Which is so awesome. So what does it look like? I know you said you're open like the general school year. What does it look like for enrollment, or, coming to register? Like, what would that look like?
Oh, wonderful question too. So, what we recommend for people to do is just give us a call or send us an email and set up a meeting with us to meet with us and talk with us and tell us your story. I think that's one of the things that I'm grateful for, to be able to be a person to be told a story too, because sometimes people really just need to tell you their story
Yeah.
and to tell you all about the things, because like I said, we meet a lot of people where school was not the right place for them, and they need to get that out, and they need to get it out into a place where it can be they can be embraced and received in a way that's not judgmental, but also like, hey, I've heard so many of these stories now too, and every single one is yours and unique, and yet you are now not alone. Now you are not a bad parent or a bad kid or anything like that. It is just your story, and we're here for you. And that's part of it. So you might not even have that part, but you can just come here, meet us, hear what it's about, have us explain it, because since it is so unusual, sometimes people will project what they want us to be, and they're like,
Right.
what do you mean my kid's not self-directing himself into trigonometry? And we're like, "Ugh."
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. um because a lot of times it's like, I just need to get this kid out of this environment into an environment that's going to honor them and trust them.
Yeah.
And then, but now that they're all better, now they need to go back into that environment and go back into the classes again, right? And so
Right.
and but and if that's what you want, we'll support you there too, right?
Right.
So anyway, you come meet with us, hear about a program. Sometimes it's virtual, sometimes I'll talk to people on the phone, but if you can come in person, that's great. We'll show you around so you can see our building. Our building's really cool. It's from the 1750s, or
Ooh,
late
cool.
1750s, so it's neat. We have a historic building. And then ask all the questions. We do have lots of resources that we send people. So if anybody here ends up reaching out to me and you get the resource list, don't worry about it. Pick and choose what works. We try and have a little bit of everything, like podcasts and books and videos and things like that. But do your research, learn about what self-directed education is, learn about this kind of democratic education. And then we ask you to, the prospective person that's coming in to enroll, to come in for a trial. It's really important for you to see what it's like to be here and see how you feel, and if this is something that you want to be doing. So we keep coming back to the young person, keep coming back to them. It is their choice, it is their
Right.
lives. You get to choose what you want to do with your life. And it is tricky. I mean, I've definitely met parents that are heartbroken that their kids don't choose this. They're like, what, this would have been so good for you.
Like, I want to
Right.
go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, come in and try us out. We send people the link to our calendar, and we tell them, pick a day that looks really interesting with classes. Most of our classes are drop in too, so they're designed for you to feel like, oh, I totally want to do crazy crimes this week. Oh, nope, I don't want to do it. And that's absolutely fine. And so pick a day that looks cool, and then pick a day that looks really boring, so that you can experience boredom and experience what it's like to be here when you're like, I don't know what to do. Because that's a great place of self-reflection. It's a great place
Yeah.
of exploration. That discomfort of not knowing what to do very few people get in that age group, because every moment of the day is scheduled. Like, you can't even
Yeah.
think, right? And so this, I don't know what to do, I'm really bored, is a great place to grow from. And I talk a lot about the classes. We talked a lot about the classes, but we also have a lot of governing circles too. So some people actually just like to do the governance, because the budget meeting doesn't have to be the whole community meeting. It can just be people excited about the budget. And so we'll have budget
There are
meetings.
people that are.
Right? Yeah, some people love a spreadsheet. I am one of them. But we'll have like a hiring circle, a travel planning circle, cleaning, building maintenance circle. So those are also on the schedule too. So you might not ever want to take a class, and you might want to just hang out and figure out what the budget looks like. Or you might never want to do any of these things and just hang out with your friends, or play video games, or read a book, or walk into town. All of those things are okay.
It's so awesome. That's so awesome. I'm like loving it more and more. I mean, I knew I was going to love it. That's why I said I was so excited, because I knew I was going to love it. Like, it just is it's in today's society, it's so needed, and it's like the solution that parents are looking for of what else is there and how do we make this work?
Yeah, I think with what you were saying with that emotional health, and emotional awareness and intelligence, and also collaboration and working together and problem solving, um, that's that's what it is. Those are skills that we all need. I wish I'd had more of them when I was younger, but I'm learning along with everybody here, and I'm really grateful for it. And I can get all the academics. I can get that online. I can get a tutor. I can, watch a great courses video, but I can't get a conflict resolution circle necessarily. And so those are the things that people here are learning and experiencing and living their lives. And we're here to help with the academics too, but really it's the other.
Yeah, getting the socialization. It's not the homeschool that you're just
Yeah.
focused on, now you're getting the everything. And I know,
Yeah.
like, I don't want to end this conversation. Like, there's so much
Oh.
more we could talk about. This has been so awesome and amazing. So
Well, I'm
people
happy to
get,
talk anytime.
right. So people to get in touch with you, like, what's the best way for people to reach out if they're like, oh, I want to explore this. I want my kid to come check it out. What's the best way?
Absolutely. Send me an email. My name is Catina, Catina, at embarkcenter.org. And just to clarify, we are Embark Center for Self-Directed Education. We are not Embark Behavioral Health. That's a whole other organization. So
Right.
you want to catch me at embarkcenter.org, and also our website, embarkcenter.org. You can learn more about us on there. And then our social media is Facebook and Instagram, Embark Center. It's fun to follow our social media because we have pictures of what we're doing and videos, but also we like to share a lot of other resources too.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your wisdom and giving other options to parents with kids, neurodiverse kids, of what school can look like.
And even if you don't want Embark Center at all, but you don't know what else to do and you're looking for other things, send me an email anyway. I can help point you in the right direction. There's lots of other places in the world for your child. No child should have to suffer if they don't need to. I mean, nobody should have to suffer.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Stress Free IEP with your host, Frances Schefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through schefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.